This is like a very good event. We see lots of different products like, okay, now this is so cool. I'm going to use like lead ads and offline conversions, and I'll go measure using lift study. And I'm always excited to see that and what you guys want to build like right now. But before you start to do that, we like to give you guys some tips, some best practices that can help you to build a decent product, a good product. And I'm here to do this with help of my friend Jordan here. And so let's start you giving like an overview of what we want to do. All those ideas, like whenever you're building like be it for yourself, be it as a partner, like there will be so many different variables, like, and having the basics right will help you move faster, and this is very important. And so to help you with that, we selected a few questions that get to our team in Solutions Eng in every part of the world that we see so many times, and we think it's important to everyone to know how to deal in those specific situations. We have 5 of them, 2 a little more on the basic side, and then Jordan will talk a little more about the more advanced stuff. But still, like, this is something that you can get for every single case. Getting this right will be very important and will make you move a lot faster in the long run. So it's worth to get the time to do this right the first time. So let's start with the first one. This is like really simple. This is the basic part, access tokens. How should I manage that? I'll have like lots and lots of different access tokens. What should I do with all these things? And what is the best practice around this? Just to get everyone on the same page, an access token is just like a really long string like this one behind me. An access token will allow you to validate if you can or cannot do an API call for Facebook. And so you will have lots of different access tokens in your development cycle. First one, you will have the user access token. This is to do calls on behalf of a person. So it's like Thiago is going there and using your application to do something. So you use a user access token. I might be doing something on behalf of a page. For example, I'm checking the commands or writing a command on behalf of a page, answering as a business. For that, I'll use a page access token. I can be also changing configurations for my app. For example, changing the roles of people who have access to that. For that, I'll use the app access token. This is a more rare case, so today we'll focus more on the first 2. Those are the ones that you will need to handle the most during your development, so it's important to get them right. So just so I can get an idea of how we're going today, like, can you answer me a quick question? For example, how many here are developing solutions using the marketing API for yourselves? You're developing a product and using it yourself for your campaigns. So I have a few hands up. OK, cool. I guess the rest is on the other case. You're a partner. You're developing a solution and selling it to third parties as a service, as a technology tool somehow. Is that correct? OK. Considering that, we need to talk about what are the possible solutions in this case. If you are on the first one, talking just about yourself, normally your setup is simple. You have like some backend system that will do some management on the API. There might be a few people that have access to that, but mostly you're dealing with one or just a few pages, one or just a few ad accounts, and this is it. And this is the first scenario. On the other hand, when you're a partner, you don't want to do like all this lifting by yourself. You want to have something more scalable. In this case, you have different users. They have all different permissions. There might be different reasons for a person to have access to a specific thing. So you need to have a more robust solution in this case. Let's get a more concrete example to see one thing that helps a lot. In both cases, mostly on the first one, but I think it's worth everyone to know about this. I've seen like many complex solutions coming from partners or from advertisers. And they were like, OK, I'm building all those things, and I'm using the token for myself. Or worse, I just create a fake Facebook profile so I have something attached that I can use, and it's not attached to my personal one, because I don't want to mix business and my personal life. And then you get, it's a very hard situation. Let's see how we can do this better. You can have like imagine we have a video campaign, and we want to increase the budget for that. I can go there, I click a button somewhere, I run a script by myself, I go on Power Editor or change the budget. This is fine. This is an action that I am doing. I can use a user access token to do that through the API. But also, there are many cases where I went, OK, I have this background system that is checking the campaigns every week, and if they're performing well, I increase the budget by 15%. This is not Thiago who's doing that. This is a system. So in this case, the best solution is to have what we call assistant user. Assistant user is something that was built by Facebook to help those use cases where you have computational systems working with marketing campaigns. System users are special in the sense that they don't have a Facebook profile. They will never have a news feed to check pictures. They will never go to Instagram or anything like that. But they can do everything through the API, and they have some advantages. It's a lot easier to control them. So you can create a bunch of system users on your business manager, can give them names. Maybe we call this one Bob, or whatever. And this system user will have a token that is a little different from the ones that we got for a user. For a user, we're always worried about actions being taken on behalf of the user without their knowledge. So in this case, tokens expire. They have like a few hours until they expire, and you can extend that for up to approximately 2 months at this moment. It's annoying to get a computer system that every 2 months you need maintenance and to get information right. You need to go there, change the token, get a new one. And so for system users, tokens do not expire. You can expire them manually if you have a problem, but normally you just set up and forget it. And so system users help a lot in the case when things are simple. So if you are a direct advertiser, my recommendation is just go and use a system user. Do the API calls using that, generate the reports. This will make your life a lot easier. This system user, as any other user on Facebook, will need to have access to your page, to your ad accounts. And so when you're doing this setup for the first time, probably it's a good idea to have someone, even if this person is not a developer, who's the admin of your business manager. Because the admin will have access to all the assets, be it pages, all the ad accounts, so you'll have more visibility to create a system user and give the right permissions. After that, you can talk with your developers and say, okay, yeah, we have this thing, now we can use this to build amazing systems for yourself. So this is very good. We have some admin, they create a system user, they give access to this user for all the assets in the business manager, talk with the developers, and we can start building something. This is cool. You will still need to have a Facebook app. The Facebook app is only to do the API calls. So what happens a lot is that, okay, I have a mobile app that I use for my customers, and then I want to use the same one to build my marketing API solution. My recommendation is that you do not do that. You can have a separate app. You won't have any downsides on that, and you have like a more separation. You have less chance of messing up something, confusing stuff that should not be changed because of whatever reason. So have it separate. This one is an internal-only tool for your company, and the other is externally facing. Treat it differently. Now that we talked a little about this direct case, let's talk about the more complicated one. When you are a partner and you want to build a solution that is more scalable. In this case, you will have to manage multiple tokens. There is a token for Thiago. There is a token for Jordan. There are page tokens and all that. So the best way to start managing that is using Facebook login. Using Facebook login, you can get and do API calls from the interface on a web browser, like pretty straightforward. You don't need to look at the tokens, see when it will expire. We have a JavaScript SDK that will help you manage that transparently. In this case, you can get the token. You have access to the token explicitly. You could, for example, extend it, save it on your backend, and then do calls on behalf of the user from your backend. You don't need to do everything on the interface. But then you have control. If the user, for example, loses his password because it was leaked somehow, the user changes the password on Facebook, and that's it. The token is invalidated, and you have security. So you have more control. You have a better situation and better way to manage who has access to something. Because on Facebook, if the person has not the power to change something on a specific page, they won't be able to do that with this token. This is not the case when you have a system user, because the system user have access to the page. If any person has access to that, you lose control of who's doing what. And so it gets confusing. So Facebook login is good when you're a partner. It helps you manage stuff. It helps you have like permission control in an easier way. But there are still cases where you want to provide not only a technology platform for your clients. You also want to provide some service in some sense. You want to have someone that can take a look at their campaigns every once in a while, provide some optimization, change a bit, pause a campaign. When you're doing that, you need to have access to their assets. They can share their page with your business manager, and then you can have your employees changing things on that page. In this case, beyond Facebook login, you should also ask your client to share the assets with you. You will have still the control. You will still have all the possibilities of tracking who's doing what with a specific page, but then you have a full setup. So this is like interesting to know. You can have both solutions at the same time, and they work for different purposes. And so we have all those setups. There are multiple options, as I was saying, but the tokens and all that are a thing for authentication. It is something related to security. So in the sense, in security, unfortunately, things go wrong. Sometimes there will be a problem. There will be something that go bad, and you need to be prepared for that. You need to handle the situation and know what to do in this case. So I prepared here like 3 different cases and the instructions on what to do regarding Facebook on that sense. For example, let's suppose you have a system user, somehow it was leaked. Someone committed it to GitHub. And then what happens in this case? You can go to Business Manager, invalidate the token. That's it. Do it fast. It's something sensible, but you can go there and do it by UI. There's no need to do much more than that. Another case, you have lots of user access tokens. A database leaked, and then you have to do damage control. The users can change the passwords, but also you can generate new tokens for those users. When you generate a new token, the old ones will be invalidated, so this is a good idea. Anyway, to do this, generating a new token for the users, you have to use what we call the app secret. This is something that you have for your own app and should be kept on your backend. In this case, if the app secret is safe, it's all good. We are safe. But let's say, among with this leak, we lost our app secret as well. Yeah, change the app secret immediately, because all those tokens, someone can generate new tokens for those users, so you get a situation that is quite serious. Try to keep this in mind and get tokens correctly. Normally, you can do that and having the tokens, so they will be invalidated in many cases, such as user changing a password. But you need to be prepared in the case that there is a problem, you need to react fast. So those tips help a lot to understand how you should build your system from scratch. So you don't have problems down the line because, oh no, I cannot have an access token for this user because this and that reason. But then we get to the point, okay, I got system user access tokens correctly. Now I want to do something. Certainly, at some point, I want to get data. I want to know what's happening. I can do that going to Ads Manager or Power Editor, but also I want to do it through the API. I'm a partner. I want to have this in an automated fashion. So there are a few tips for that. I think a very good one is this. The information on the Insights API is not updated in real time. It takes some time for us to get information out to you guys through the API. So every 8 minutes is an approximation. This number is not precise, but it's something around that you will get new information. All in all, if you call the API too much, you will have issues because it will be throttled. Your calls will start to fail if you call the API too much, request too much data. So keep in mind, you don't need to call for insights every single minute to get the most recent information that is available. To summarize that, please move fast, but not too fast. This way, you're getting information you want to get using the insights and points and all that. But this is still not the only thing you need to decide on how to get information from Facebook. Suppose you want to report, okay, all the campaigns that happen in the next 6 months with a breakdown by gender, device, and the country they are accessing that. This is a lot of information. It will take a while to process and give you that. So what can we do to make this better? In case the user is looking into the user interface, we have what we call synchronous reports. This is simple. You can go there, do an API call, get information back. That's it. This is the recommended way to do user interfaces. And you can get information. But the thing is, if you request too much data this way, you will get out-of-memory errors, because those go to our web tier, and then we have a limit of how much memory we can use to serve a request for one user. So this might fail in this sense. Then what can you do in this case? You can go and do the asynchronous reports. In this case, you will have less API throttle. We will be more relaxed on how we judge those calls and how much it affects towards your API limits. And this will provide you better reports in terms of having more data at once. Also, there are disadvantages. In this case, this report will go to a pool. They will be processed inline. So there is no guarantee that, OK, this report will start right away to be processed. If you get a moment with high traffic, it may take a while to start. But then you can check how this is progressing, how much % of the report was already computed, and then when you will be able to download this information. So this is cool if you're doing some offline analysis, you're doing some machine learning, something like this. Use asynchronous reports. Probably it's better. Continuing on tips for that. As I said, go for UIs, use the synchronous reports. There is another one. For example, let's say I want information about all my ads on a specific ad account. There are two common ways of getting this information. For example, I can go there and say, OK, ad account / ads, or ad account / insights level ad. What that means, OK, for this ad account, get information broken down by ads. This will work. This is fine. But due to the way our systems are built on the back end, you can go and just call the ads directly. Get a list of all the ad IDs you have for this ad account and call them directly. This will give you a faster answer. So this is good to make your system work better and will count less toward the limits for the API usage. So this is a very good tip on how to use insights. Beyond that, when you're doing offline reports, consider what happens when you need information. For example, if you're looking for something from the last week, OK, is there any chance that this information is not precise? Is there any chance that this information will change in the future? There is. But how it works on Facebook side? We consolidate data after 72 hours. What that means? We do some invalidations. We check for things that should not be there. For example, clicks that shouldn't be counted. And so things like that will be consolidated after 72 hours. So after this timeline, you can be sure that the data won't change. The numbers of how much was spent on a specific campaign won't change after that, for example. So this is a good number to have on your head when you're looking about information to be saved on your side. OK? Let's think about insights before I hand it to Jordan. Download only the data that you need. It might be cool to go there and just say, OK, I need all this data because I want to optimize using this really complex model. And you get lots of information. This will count towards the limits. And information like this is hard to get everything that you need. There are lots of things that you can do. Breakdowns will change the numbers that you see. So when you need this information, it'll be there. Call the API. But don't just get information and we use it to store without having a clear reason to do that. It's just like time you're wasting that you could be doing things that are more productive and will generate more value for you and for your customers. And now, I'll pass it to Jordan. He'll talk a little more about optimization at first, right?
Yeah. Cool, thanks, Thiago. So I'm now going to talk through the final 3 best practices and frequently asked questions that we get within solutions engineering. And the first one is probably one that you're all wondering how to do better. And that's what's the best way to optimize my ads? And the answer is very simple. Don't. Now that's said very tongue-in-cheek, but the meaning behind it is real. When you come to optimization, don't try and game the system. At Facebook, we have very advanced machine learning models and techniques that continually try and optimize the ads that are running and deliver them to the right people at the right time. And this is done through a concept called pacing, which I'll discuss in a minute. And the way some people try and optimize their ads by radically changing bids, radically changing budgets, can really have a negative impact on pacing, and thus mean that overall, your campaigns perform worse than if you just left it alone. So let's take a quick look at how that could be. So first thing is, these graphs is time of day, price up the side, and this is the number of ad opportunities that are available over time. So if you've been manipulating the ads and you've been trying to game the system by going for the lowest possible cost per click or cost per conversion, and you set your bid quite low to try and drive the system to optimize towards that, throughout the time of day, the number of opportunities available to you was 4 in this scenario. So that's okay. You spent $4. Each one has a value of $5. So taking 4 from your budget of $10 gives you a return on investment of 16. That's not bad. Now, if we go the other way and we try and game the system by just getting rid of our budget as fast as we can, we put a really high bid, we don't have this notion of pacing, what happens then is that Facebook will just spend that money as fast as it can. It'll go for every opportunity that is within that bid, and that can perform okay as well. So in this scenario, it does actually perform better than trying to game the system by going really low. So for the same $10 budget, there were 6 opportunities that you won, each with a value of $5, giving you an overall profit of $20. So when we take these two scenarios and then compare them against the paced version of what could possibly be, the result is slightly different. So the way pacing works is Facebook tries to spread out the overall budget that it has available across a 24-hour period. So it's not done equally, so it takes into account things like spikes in traffic that we see on a regular basis due to time of day, seasonality, weekends. And it'll try and optimize towards maximizing the number of opportunities that you have available across that 24-hour window. So taking this scenario, if you'd have just set your true value bid of $2, that's how much it was worth to you, your $10 would have got you 7 conversions, giving you a total return of $35 and an overall profit of $25. Now that's a very basic example, but hopefully it covers the reasons why pacing is important, and trying to affect pacing or manipulate bids and budgets could have a negative effect. So to try and boil that down into a much simpler graph, the way pacing works is that that line up the middle is a 24-hour period, and we want to stay as close to that line as possible. If we start to spend too fast because you're getting loads of conversions at the start of the day, we'll pull your max bid down to bring you closer to that line. Contrary to that, if you're going too slowly and your ad is underperforming, we will steadily increase your bid till it reaches the maximum bid to try and bring you much closer to the optimal line. And then we want that ideal pacing line to be how your campaign spends its money throughout the day. And if you start beginning to manipulate the bid and the budget, every single time this line gets reset. These curves get reset. Each change that you make means our system has to take what it's learned and throw it away and begin to learn all that over again. So you can see why, if you try and game the system by driving for the cheapest click or ramping out your budget completely and then shutting it off halfway through the day, you might be missing out on opportunities that you would have otherwise had available to you. So with that in mind, there are a few do's and don'ts when it comes to trying to optimize your ads. The first one is do put in the max bid you're willing to pay. If things change, you can change that, but don't try and manipulate the bid at the start of the campaign and then drive it up or down depending on performance. Secondly, do increase the budget or set the budget that you want to spend throughout the day. That gives our system the most opportunity to spend that budget because it knows that it has 24 hours to spend X number of dollars. And lastly, do set accurate start and end times so we know actually how long we have. And then just to summarize the don'ts, don't try and drive for the cheapest click or impression, and don't change the bids or budgets too frequently. Now, one tip is if you do need to change the bids or budget, it's much better to do that at the start of a new day, because that way we haven't learned very much and the pacing is at its very earliest point. If you start changing things in the middle of the day, you're probably going to see worse performance than if you changed it at the very start. So to make changes are good, just do it early on in the day. And you can optimize in other ways. As George highlighted earlier on today, with things like trigger-based rules, schedule-based rules, and things like budget rebalancing that we now have within the API, you can let Facebook handle a lot of the optimization and a lot of the checking and keeping track of these metrics, and just get notified when you need to make the change. And the changes could be changing creative, putting open a new ad set and turning one off, or swapping out an audience because you want to shift that budget around. So you'll probably all have encountered this at some point developing on our API, and that's that you'll be coding away, and all of a sudden you get slapped down with an error code because you've been using too many resources. So let's understand why that happens and how you can actually mitigate against that. So the first thing to understand is that the Graph API and the Marketing API have two separate rate limits completely. So even though the Marketing API is a subset within the larger Graph, they have different rate limits. One does not count to the other. So if you have products that work on both, it's safe to say that you won't be impacting each other. And the way our rate limiting throttling system works for the Marketing API is on the ad account level. And then within that, each ad account has an overall score of n. That is the number of calls or the number of resources or the number of things that it's allowed to make within a set time of a set sliding window that moves through time. So in this scenario, you're making a few calls. They each have different levels of intensity or resource requirement, and you're staying well below that maximum value. You can make more intensive calls over time quite easily. You make some creates, you make some updates, you pull some intensive insights reports, and you begin to move up your max limit, but you don't come anywhere near the top. And then lastly, if you were to suddenly go and make a whole load of creates or a whole load of updates or start pulling a whole load of insights reports, those are very expensive, and you'll hit your overall rate limit, and you'll see that lovely error code that you've probably all seen many times. Error code 17, user request limit reached. Go do something else for a couple of minutes because you are no longer allowed to use our API. So what can you actually do when that does occur? Well, the first thing is just double check that it is that particular rate limit. Depending on the access token and the endpoint, it could be different. You might have an application rate limit reached. So just bear in mind that the rate limit is on the user level. So unfortunately, the call will get blocked for an entire minute, and there is nothing you can do about that. But in that time, our system will begin to decay how much you've gone over to bring you back under that maximum n value at x points per second. So it does decay and it does come down. So you might get access back within a minute, but depending on how far you've shot over, it might take a slightly longer. So during that time, switch to other ad accounts, go make a coffee if you're doing development, but yeah, unfortunately, you're going to be locked out for a minute or two. And then I think the biggest insight or tip here is that it's worth noting that on our API, creates and updates are not equal. Updates are about 100 times more expensive than a create is. So if you have the choice of making a new object or changing an object, it's much better to make the new object instead of going and updating the other one, because it's far less expensive and you're more likely to stay under that maximum value. And there are some other special cases that are worth calling out as well. So within the ad account, the spend cap and the spend action cap fields are restricted and do have their own number of requests that you can make or the number of changes that you can make in a day. For the ad set, the daily budget and lifetime budget can only be changed 4 times an hour. If you decide you want to change it more than that, you'll get locked out for an hour. And that's because we know that changes to this affect our pacing algorithms. And lastly, the number of ads that you can create is restricted by the amount of daily spend it is restricted by the daily spend limit on the ad account. So if you have a brand new ad account that has a daily spend limit of $250, you're not going to be able to create as many ads as if you're a sales client that's been with Facebook for many years and has a very, very large daily spend limit. And then just to reference back to Alan, who showed you the Marketing API analytics dashboard that is available in the App Analytics suite, you can debug all this in there. So you can see the number of errors, you can filter by method, you can filter by ad account. So you can really drill down into which endpoint account call is the one that's pushing you over the edge. And lastly, and very shortly, this is another thing that I imagine you've all encountered, and that's when you've stumbled across something that's broken or doesn't make sense or is probably a bug. Like, what should you actually do? Well, the first thing is head to our developer site, developers.facebook.com/bugs, and check that you're not alone. So go and search, put some keywords in, put the endpoint, the error code that you're seeing, and see if anyone else has this problem. If you do, subscribe, and we have a 30-day SLA to solve these, and depending on how severe they are, they will be solved at different rates. You know, if no one's allowed to spend, if no one can create campaigns anymore, that's much more severe than a field being missing on one of the other APIs. Actually, take a step back. If there isn't a option or it isn't a topic or a bug open, you can open your own bug. So it's very easy. You click on whichever one it is in there. You have to be registered and logged in. You can create a bug. You can put in all of the information that you need, and please be as descriptive as possible. You can submit access tokens privately, example calls that you made, and the more information you give, the easier it is for our teams to reproduce, and the more likely it is that it will get solved and solved quickly. The next thing is catching bugs early. So as our partners, or as anybody who develops on the API, it's good to have steps in place to try and catch bugs before they come into production. And we have a beta tier that sits within our graph and within our JavaScript SDK that allows you to get the latest version of the code that's about to be pushed to production. So this gives you a couple of hours heads up if something is about to break, for instance. So what we say is it's always good to run your tests against our beta tier because you'll be able to get informed when stuff is about to break and then do any debugging or future debugging if you find bugs in production. And the last call out here is for our push status API. So this is a platform API that just tells you the status of our latest code push. Now this is really useful because if you set up your regression testing to run when this push is complete, you can quickly see if a change that landed in this particular push has broken a particular part of your tool, one of the API calls that you make, and just be informed straight away that something has landed in production that has actually broken something. So we were only able to cover 5 things that we frequently get asked in the time, but there are many, many more things and many, many more questions that you guys will probably have. And 2 good sources of information for that are one, our documentation for the marketing API that sits at developers.facebook.com/docs/marketing-APIs, but also in our marketing developer community, where you can all go and ask questions to your peers or other people that work on the marketing API and find out tips or find out that there are issues that other people are experiencing and get good sources of information there. And that's all we have time for. And I think we're slightly over. So if you have any questions, myself and Thiago will be at the booth after the next talk. So thank you very much.